Okay, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. John Bartz here with NCSI. Welcome to our December Grub Club, where this month we're presenting the Ivanti Enterprise Service Manager. You should have received an email from Grubhub. We are creating a new lunch delivery program here. Instead of getting pizza, you have the flexibility to order your own meals. So just wanted to check and make sure everything's going well with that. It is a new process. You should have received an email from Grubhub with instructions, and hopefully you're enjoying a nice lunch right now with the Grub Club. So let's go into the Studio 3B. Standing by are Brian and Brian. Hello, Brian.
Morning, everyone.
And just want to remind everyone that throughout the presentation today, feel free to put your questions in either the Q&A or in the chat. We will be monitoring that throughout. So let's go ahead and get started right away. Let's turn it over to you in the studio, Brian.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Brian Hoskins here. We're going to be covering quite a bit over this. Also want to introduce Mr. Hodzik.
Hi, everybody. So thanks for joining. We're going to be playing kind of two different parts. I'm going to be playing the part of the user today. Mr. Hoskins will be playing the part of the analyst and so forth. So I'm going to be monitoring those questions. Please keep them coming, and we'll try and keep it interactive and tailor it to what you guys' needs are. So thanks for joining.
So today we're going to be going through quite a bit, and we're going to be going pretty fast to be able to get through everything that we're talking about here. So we're going to move through some different configuration about both service management and asset management that sit on this Ivanti Enterprise Service Management platform. And we're going to kind of walk you through some of the different modules that are available and stuff. I'm not going to go through all of this, but just kind of give you a visual of where we're going to be at and where we're going to be going from this perspective. So let's go ahead and jump on over, and we'll come to a couple of different scenarios. We've got a couple of roles that we're going to be playing through this as we're going through the different parts. I've got our CIO, who's going to be worried a little bit about reporting some of the different components within our extraction tool. I've got our primary admin account here that will be walking through different pieces of the administration side of it. And then I've got an analyst over here. We'll probably spend most of our time at looking at it from an admin perspective, but we can also see what the analyst's view is from a day-to-day view associated with that. And then again, Mr. Hodzik's going to be playing our end user, so he's going to be submitting some different tickets and different things associated with that, right? So I just want to start really quickly with a quick view of our reporting configuration that exists on this, which is called extraction. You'll see here, extraction has some different capabilities to be able to go through and do some different stuff. I'm just going to grab a quick couple of reports from Ivanti Service Manager. Let's just jump into some incident management reports associated with this. And we can see something like we've got incident categorization, or we can look at maybe an incident open incidents report or an agent performance report or different things along these lines, right? And so these are just some different dashboards that are there. Really like the incident categorization one, where you can go through and kind of drill into some different pieces along these lines. You'll also notice I'm going to put that on a quick monitor mode, that it's just going to cycle between these different dashboards associated with that. I don't want to spend a ton of time here because we don't have 90 minutes to go through this webinar. So this is a very powerful tool that we can go through and pull reports and pull different configuration on from Ivanti Service Manager, and we can manage all of that associated with it. So we can jump into that. If you guys want to see more detail, please, we'll see a call to action to reach out to your NCSI sales rep, and we can schedule an in-depth demo for you along those lines. So we'll go ahead and switch over now to our primary machine that we're going to be doing most of the stuff from today, which is our admin. And we'll be able to see from this perspective, you'll see I'm logged in up here with our NCSI admin, and I'm currently set at the administrator role. From that administrator role perspective, I can go through and start to see, obviously, access to all the different platform, everything that's available to me, and I can go through and work through each of the different components associated with that, right? And I can see, as this point, my home dashboard is going to be around incident management and the different pieces along those lines. If I were to switch my role, all of that access and home dashboard and different things would change based upon that. So if I were to say, I want to look at from a service desk manager perspective, now you'll notice my home dashboard is going to be, what's my team's workload look like? What's the workload look like that's coming in that hasn't been accepted by anyone on the team yet? What's our active incidents by priority? What's our different components associated with that? And we can see all the details as you're working from there. You'll also see that I can track how we're doing at our service levels. So as we're getting our service response and different pieces along those lines, I can see that. I can also see, what are our surveys coming back as we're responding and working with the different configuration. All of our customers are responding back with the surveys that they're getting and giving us grades on how we're performing for them. So we can see that kind of information on here as well as a manager perspective. If I were to then switch over to, say, an analyst role, you see everything jumps back into a very much my task oriented. We're not looking at graphical charts and dashboards and things along those lines. We're looking at what's my workload, what are my tasks, what are my active incidents, what are my active service requests, and I can see all of those kind of things from an analyst perspective as we're kind of walking through associated with that. So let's go ahead and open up an incident associated with this and kind of walk through some of the different components. Now you'll see, and I'm just going to switch back over to the admin so that we make sure we get all the different details in here, but you'll see all of these components up here along the top. These are what we call a workspace or a module. Every one of these workspaces or modules follows the exact same look and feel. They all have a search up here along the top. They have a results in the middle and a preview down here along the bottom. So if I select one of my favorited searches, like my active incidents, it will go out and run that search, and my results will be based upon what that search filter criteria is. And I can go through any of these different components. My team's active incidents, grab that really quickly, or looking at incidents that had a first call resolution on them, and I can go quickly find some of those kind of details. You'll also notice there is a search on incidents here. This is just a free text search. So I could put something as simply as somebody's name in there to find that, or I could put something like Outlook, and they would be able to go through and find everything that was Outlook. And I can even put operators on here so I can search for anything was Outlook and Brian that had been able to be submitted into the system at that point. You'll also see from here, I can filter on each one of these different columns that's visible. So if I wanted to grab one of these, I could go through and look at that and see that detail. I can also see a quick filters up here along the top. So if I were to say, let's start with all incidents, and I want to create a search from this, I could quickly grab something like, show me everything that's logged and active, that's a priority 3 or 4, that's assigned to my team, where the user is a VIP, that the service that they're calling about is the desktop service, and they're calling from Canada, right? Now that got all the way down to a single record. So as I look at that, that single record opened up automatically as opposed to going through and showing me a result set of 1. So it knew that's where we wanted to go. It went through and put that in there. Now, if I were to say, let's remove Canada, you see it comes back to another one. And if we removed something like the desktop service or user VIP or any of those other things, obviously that result set would grow. From here, you can also see we have a, save as a saved search if I want this to be something later. Now, again, I'm showing you all of this in incident, but this is across all of the modules, whether it's incident, problem, change, request, asset, CMDB. All of these things allow you to go through and create these saved searches, work with all of the different details along those lines from there. So let's go ahead and create our first incident. Here, we'll clear out our search results, and we'll go ahead and take this first incident. Now, if we were taking this incident, we were getting a phone call, first thing we would do is take the user that's calling and have that. Mr. Hodzik is going to show you our voice technology here in a minute. If somebody were calling and using that, it could automatically put that user in associated with that. So I can come in here and say, no, let's do Marcia on this. So we'll put Marcia in. You'll notice Marcia's a VIP. We're going to see Marcia's information from the different area where she's at, department, phone number, contact information. If I wanted to see more information about Marcia, I could go into the employee record, and you're going to be able to see things like organization, department, manager. I'm also going to see things like what's Marcia's incident history, what's her assets that have been assigned to her in the system. All of that's going to be there as well to be able to go through and find some of that detail along those lines. Now, from this perspective, we can say, we have a Windows profile error, details 1408. You'll notice that this field here is an HTML field. I can maximize that. I can drag and drop screenshots to that. I can have all kinds of rich content in that description field because it is an HTML enabled field on there. Let's go ahead and select this as a desktop service and that this is an application failure that's going on along those lines. Now you'll notice as I went through and did that, it went out and searched knowledge. It searched problem management records. It searched incident history as well as active changes that are going on. Oops, I didn't click that right. So there are the different components that it searched against the information that we typed in the summary field along those lines. So now if I wanted to look at active changes, maybe this is being triggered by a change. We can see some, some patches that are going out. Maybe that's causing this. Or we can see where this has happened in the past. Other times we've seen this particular error, and we could come in here and look at that and say, oh, maybe the ASDF resolution is what fixed it. So we can go through and have that in the next one, right? So you can also see here's some things where they were logged in or whatever. And if those were old incidents were to resolve this new incident, I could come in here and click resolve incident and kind of work through from that perspective. Also, we can track problems. So this is something that's occurring again and again in our organization. We can come in here and see, here's the details of that. And we can come through and kind of look at that resolution of a uninstall Visio or a workaround for uninstalling Visio, some kind of conflict. And I could link this incident to that problem, or I could resolve this incident via this resolution or this workaround and link it as well. So I've got that. And then lastly, very rich knowledge articles where you can see here's a Windows profile error with a bunch of screenshots that somebody's going to be working on. If that were to solve this problem, I can say link and resolve. It will then move this to a status of resolved. It will then go through, put that information of that knowledge article in the resolution here. And I would be able to see that information from a linked knowledge article as well. So I would be able to see all of those details. Go ahead and save that. And that first incident, we've been able to put that in. That user's going to get their emails with all of the notifications associated with that and all of that from there. So that's our first incident as an analyst taking that phone call. Let's go ahead and switch over to Mr. Hodzik, and he's going to actually open up some incidents from the self-service catalog and through email.
All right, so today I'm going to be playing the part of the user. I'm going to log in as April here and go through the process of what it takes to interact with the system and what I see from an end user's perspective. So here I have April logged into the self-service portal. Now, a couple of cool things you could do here is we can brand this. All of these color schemes, and we can put our logo at the top. Let's get your city or county's logo and put it at the top and customize it, brand it so it looks like it's coming, from your organization. I can also change some of the titles up here, like where I say IT support portal, where we've had a lot of success with a lot of the different states and cities that we're working with is branching outside of IT, not just having this be ITSM support, but being enterprise service management. Let's reach out to facilities and HR and different organizations like that and help this be part of their service management as well. So here on my screen, you can see we have some cool things like up at the top. I make some announcements. Maybe there's an outage or there's an upcoming change that's happening, or I need to tell my users something. So I can have these announcements up here at the top. I can easily access my knowledge base, go into the service catalog, look at my individual items. All of these things are customizable. My favorite's the search box right here in the middle. Users don't know what an knowledge article means or what a frequently asked questions or an announcement are. So I could just search for something. I just looked for Outlook. In our Omni search, we pulled up things from Q&A, frequently asked questions, and different announcements. So maybe I want to know how to create a PST. That's going to pick me up, take me over to the knowledge base, and now I see it from an end user's perspective. The same thing you saw from Mr. Hoskins' perspective. Now this is what end users see. If they go back to the knowledge base, I can see more rich articles, just like he was describing, where I can put like a YouTube video in here. I can attach a Word document. The user can give a rating on this. They can download attachments. They can give comments and say whether it's helpful or not. So we can mature our knowledge base to have better content over time. I can also do things like this. If someone searched for a standing desk Well, a standing desk isn't really a knowledge base article, but we can go link over to something that is a request because they want to request a standing desk. So we can link over there. So let's go and actually interact with it and start making some things happen. How do users interact? They like to email, right? So let's go fire off an email real quick to our support. Here we have the address. I'm going to be like a typical user. I'm going to be very verbose and descriptive with what my problem is. I'm going to say it doesn't work. I'm going to say, you know, the thing doesn't work. So I'm going to send that off. We're going to let Brian deal with that and figure out how we can solve that problem later. So one way they're going to interact with is email. Other way, they may go in and look at their items that they have open today. Apparently, this user has lots of open incidents and open requests down here at the bottom, but they can kind of see the status of where they're at and what they would do with those individual incidents that they have. They can even comment on it or leave notes or save attachments, things like that. But let's go through and get something out of our service catalog. So this is the I want something. As opposed to it's broken. So my first one was it was broken. Now it's something that I want. Here are just some examples. This is just to get your mind going on what kind of things that we can offer up to your users. So don't think of this as like a definitive list or anything. This is just to get you thinking about it. Maybe they have like an account lockout problem, or they want to talk to HR around benefits, or they need data backed up, or reserve a conference room, or if we go over here and like look at our facility services, maybe it's elevator servicing or escalator, or heating and cooling, or a lighting problem, or things around HR. They need to onboard someone or offboard someone. So all of these different things can be presented to the user as one place to go and get services. Again, that enterprise service management. So let's go through here, and my first thing is I want a tablet. I want a piece of hardware. So I'm going to request a tablet. I can design this form however I want to. Don't feel like it's rigid. You get to design what it looks like. In my case, I'm just saying, first you need to tell me what department you're in and what user you're requesting on behalf of. And then maybe you have a cost center. Oh yeah, this is our facilities cost center that you need to put that in. What model do I want? Well, I want a Microsoft Surface. And I want the Microsoft Surface 64 gig version, and yes, I want a case. You can see we have this cool shopping cart mentality over here. It's on by default. You can go turn it off if you want to. But maybe you want to have some certain triggers. If it reaches a certain dollar threshold, you've got to ask for a manager's approver or something like that. We have the ability to kind of have some logic behind that. You can also give the user an estimate on what the delivery time is. I'm estimating it takes 2 weeks and 6 days to deliver this because maybe I need to buy hardware or I've got to ship it or something like that. But then we actually give the user an average. Now we're cheating here a little bit because we're going to fulfill it really quick, but our average is actually 13 minutes. So we're going to give the user a more actual time that it's been taking us to do it in the past. So I'm going to review and submit that. Again, it's like a shopping cart. So you submit it to your shopping cart. Up here at the top, it's going to be in my cart, and I submit that cart. So we're going to, push that off. Mr. House is going to have to deal with that later, and we'll see what it looks like on the back side. So let's go over here and go back into our catalog. One other thing we're going to do is a new employee request. So I'm going to go in here and say new employee setup. There's a very common request offering that we create, this is one of the biggest things because it deals with HR, it deals with facilities, it deals with IT, it deals with all these different pieces of the puzzle. You're going to see our very strong workflow engine on the back end that's able to help tackle some of these problems. So in my example, I'm going to go in here and hire someone. Let's go and hire Mr. John Bartz. What department does he work? He's going to be in the facilities services. His title is going to be head janitor. So we're hiring John is our head janitor, his full time, and he starts tomorrow. So tomorrow's the 11th. Let's pick the 11th. Wait a minute, I can't pick the 11th. Why can't I pick the 11th? Oh, down here at the bottom, I've created what's called a field level constraint. I'm sick of these people coming back and telling me that people are getting hired tomorrow. I need 2 weeks worth of notice. So I'm going to make it so that this field cannot be selected less than 2 weeks away. So you can control how these fields work. You don't have to just let the user be willy-nilly. We get control over them. What location is he going to be at? We're going to send him to our China office, and he's going to be in a cubicle. Yes, he needs a computer, and he needs a desktop and a secondary monitor or something like that. So again, you get to control what these fields look like. Some of them unlock additional fields. Some of them add costs. Some of them are a little bit more freeform, where maybe I need a user to type in some text into it. So you get to control the entire process on how this works. Oh, I actually picked a secondary monitor, so I have to go through and validate and fix that. Again, submit that over to my shopping cart. Shows up here in my shopping cart, and I would go through and submit that. All right, so lastly, let's go through and do employee termination. That's the same kind of thing that we just did. We just did it in reverse. You know, we're going to go through here and say the user that we're going to fire, and who their manager was and what their termination date. In this case, I can fire them today if I want to. Did they get an exit interview? Did we take back their access card, their parking pass, things like that? This gives us a very powerful workflow and audit trail on the back end that makes it so that we can confirm that we actually are doing the things that we're supposed to. We were supposed to take away their access. We can prove that the access was completed. And it happened on a particular time, and what the user was that submitted that. So again, that goes and lands in my shopping cart, and I submit that across. So next, let's go in through and interact with it the kind of a very classic way, and that's through the phone. A lot of our users still pick up the phone and call in. So let's go through a scenario of a user picking up the phone and calling into our help desk. We have a fake company that we use to kind of show this off called Virtrillo. So we're going to call into Virtrillo's help desk and talk to them.
Thank you for calling Virtrillo. Your call may be monitored or recorded for quality purposes. To speak to the IT service desk, please press 1.
Remember, it doesn't have to be just IT. We can do HR, payroll, things like that.
To speak to the payroll department,
So let's speak with IT.
Hello.
Brian. Notice it knew my name.
Thank you for calling the Virtrillo IT service desk. To reset your domain password, please press 1. For hardware issues, please press 2. For requesting IT.
So you can see we can do really cool things like talk to the user because we know what their name is. We were able to look them up in the system. We can look up whether they had an open incident or not. If they had an open incident, maybe we need to say, oh, are you calling about incident 1, 2, 3, 4? We gave them the option to reset their password, and they would have just had to put in some kind of secondary authentication in order to do that. And then lastly, the ability to then go and actually talk to a real agent, and we could have sent them to the hardware department, the software department, however we want to have that work. So Ivanti Voice, really cool add-on that we have, since we know that people still pick up the phone, and one of my favorites is the announcements if we're having a big outage. If you have some big outage, having everyone pick up the phone and call you doesn't help you, doesn't make it solve it any faster, right? And so having the ability to announce that outage, hey, we're having a major problem. We've had some really cool cities integrate this as part of a customer-facing or an end user, a taxpayer-facing system that if they wanted to report an electrical outage or they were calling in for building permits or something like that. This can be customer-facing as well. It doesn't have to exclusively be on the backside. So that's just some examples on how we can interact from a end user's perspective. So I'm going to pass it back over to Mr. Hoskins, and he's going to show us a little bit more on the analyst side.
Okay, so what we're going to be looking at, first of all, before we jump into the analyst side, I want to show you the self-service from a mobile device, right? So kind of from this perspective, we're going to go through, we have iOS, Android apps for both self-service and for an analyst or a technician view along these lines. I'm logged in here into the iOS app where we can go through and see that self-service, all my items, the service catalog, the search, the knowledge base, everything that we just looked at, it's all here. In my items, you're going to see from this perspective, here's a couple of things that I have to do, right? You see my issues and requests, but I've actually filtered it down over here to just the approvals because that request for a tablet that was just submitted by Mr. Hodzik here, we can go through and see here's all of those details. We can see costs, we can see price, delivery information, all of that info set here, and I can go ahead and approve that particular request along those lines. So that then goes and moves it to an active status and schedules out the details out from there. You'll also see I could switch over to the analyst view of this, right? And so as a technician, if I'm a mobile technician and I want to go through and start to do different things, it will then allow me to go in and connect to that and be able to show here's my incidents, my tasks, my service requests, all of those would be here, and I would be able to go into any one of these, do any of the different components, see announcements, right? All of that different configuration that's there, and see, here's again a query of all my active incidents or whatever it happens to be, and I would be able to go into any one of those, right? So
Hey, Brian, let me interrupt you here really quick. We got a question here.
Okay.
A user asks, do I have to pay additional licenses for the people that are approving those requests?
No, the approval is not a licensable action within Ivanti. So if they're moving a ticket from open to close other than approval, yes, it is a license, right? So, but basically, an end user doesn't need a license and an approver doesn't need a license. And it doesn't matter if they're approving a request or a change, they don't need a license to run that action of approve.
Okay, one more question here that says, do they have to have the app installed, or is there another way to approve it?
So you can use the app, you can approve through email. So if they get an email, you can actually have them respond to that email, have that approved that way. Also had another customer that they didn't want to introduce another approval mechanism. They already had an approval structure for everything else that they did. So they actually made it so that Ivanti would create approval records in their approval system that they had built, and then used the API to run the approval there. So, several different ways: email, logging into the app, logging into the web page, all of those would be available to be able to run that approval from there. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and look at a couple of these things here. If we were to now come here to the most recent list of all of our incidents, we can come in here and start to look at, here's all of the different incidents associated with this. We can see, okay, what is the most recent one that's there? Well, here we can see the "it doesn't work" incident that was sent in earlier, right? You can again see, I said it's an HTML, again, embedded images, email signatures are all handled as part of that base component there. And then we can say, okay, what more information do we need? Well, "it doesn't work" doesn't help us. So the first thing I'm going to do is select a standard base category to understand, and then I'm going to go ahead and take ownership of that, right? So then it will move it to active. It will assign it to me as that login. And you'll see at this point, it will move it to a SLA has been met from a response target perspective. And then we have certain timeframes to meet it from a resolution target. But I don't want this SLA going when we don't have enough information to resolve this. So I can actually come in here and put this on hold and say, hey, we're waiting for this customer to give us some kind of information along those lines. And if I were to save that, it could come up and ask us for an email chain to be able to send to them. Can you give us more detail, right? As I go through and put that in, that could send them me an email with that detail. If I didn't want to use that mechanism, I could also come in here and do an email. Maybe I want to send it to some other people as well. You'll see here, I've got an address book built into this where I can say, you know what, send it to their manager or the team or the owner or some other user within the business. I can track any of those different pieces along those lines, right?
Hey, Brian, I have a question here.
Yes.
Where does that contact information come from? Can we import it from Active Directory?
Yes, all of that's going to come from Active Directory so that, we're synchronizing that, and, somebody gets added to Active Directory, they automatically get brought into the platform, and then all of their, communications can happen through that mechanism. And then we can say, can you help me understand what you need? And I cannot type today. All right, so as you can kind of go through from that perspective, you'll see that email is going to go. We can get communication back and forth from them. I'll show you really quickly, right? It has a marked as unread email, the very first thing that came in. I'm going to go ahead and mark that as read so that we can see, all right, we don't need any more information, right? Now, you see over here these little blue lines. These blue lines are going to indicate that an incident that I'm the owner of, where the user or somebody else has updated it in which I have not read, right? So here's that incident. It doesn't work. If I give that a quick refresh, and maybe Mr. Hodzik needs to respond to his email.
Oh, he did?
Okay, we haven't seen it quite yet. But that email will respond, and then it will turn blue along those lines, and then we'll be able to see that information as it comes through. Sometimes that email takes a minute or so to process, and there you go. You see now it's come in, it highlights it in blue there to be able to go through and see, hey, we're having a backup error. Oh, we've got a backup error. We've got a template. This happens enough in our organization that we can go through and apply a template to that. It will then update the summary, the description, the categorization, all of that stuff, as well as you'll see here, it will create a task for someone to actually go in and restore that backup based upon our workflow and the different pieces that are built into that template, right? So all of that can be handled automatically through that template and be able to manage all of that from there. And so now we can go ahead, it's going to give out a task to somebody to go in and work on this, and then we can move on to the next thing. Again, that blue indicating there, I can say, yes, mark it as red, and then it will say, okay, we've read all of that, and it now knows that we no longer need those details. All right, quick pause before I switch over to the request side to see if you have any other questions that are on there.
Yeah, I have a question here. Is email the only way that we can ingest incidents, or is there any other mechanisms through something like an API that tickets could be opened up?
Yeah, there's several things that we can go through and do. Obviously, we have email. That's an easy one. That's what a lot of people use. Hopefully, we're pushing people more and more to the portal through the app, different components along those lines. And yes, full API, as well as some more advanced email structures. The email structures you can do with an XHTML or XML file structure so that it will actually go through and parse the email. And so if you're doing emails from automated systems, you can create that. And then obviously APIs can create those incidents. So if you have some external tool that you want to have create incidents or requests or changes or CIs or anything else, the API can go through and create any of those kind of things from there.
One more question here, asking about do you have web chat? And the answer to that is yes, we do. We unfortunately don't have time to show that today, but web chat is part of the system as well.
We have web chat. We also have, as a recent release, integration with Microsoft Teams, right? So if you have Teams and you want to be able to have that connection and have Teams integrated into the system platform, you can do that as well. Okay, so from a service request, you'll see here a couple of things. We see that tablet. We can go through and start to see the different details. Hey, here's that tablet information. There's a waiting for an approval. Maybe I approved the wrong one earlier along those lines. I might have seen a couple of them. Here you can see another example where I've approved this in the past, where I can go through and see, here's the approval information, here's the details. All of that kind of stuff is configurable. I can go through and see those details. And I think that one's actually the one we were looking at there from that, right? But you can see those, the approval, there's a task assigned, and I can come in here and say, yes, I'm going to accept that task. I'm going to go ahead and complete that task. As I go through and complete that task, it's going to ask how much time we went through and had associated with that. And then as that goes through from there, you would be able to see here's all of the kind of details along those lines. It gives cost structures to be able to see what it took to fulfill this particular component. And then this will eventually move to a fulfilled status once the workflow goes through and processes that all the tasks have been completed based upon that information. Right? So you've got all of those details in the request. You also saw here we had that employee setup. The employee setup, we can go through and start to see, hey, we're hiring Mr. Bartz and all of the different pieces along these lines, and we need all of the information. Well, here are tasks that came up with that. Configure phone and voicemail, configure computer, configure workspace, configure keycard access. All of that configuration that we can go through and see, where did all of these tasks come from? Well, they came from what's called our request offering. So the request offering is here where we think everything that gets put into the catalog is going to be a request offering that we can configure from this. So if I were to say, just look at this quick tablet request, here you can see all of the tablet information, all the different configuration that we're stating. Here's the base, what's the base cost? Can they cancel their request? Can they edit their request? Do we want to hide pricing information? All of that is available here. And then we can go through and look at the form. You'll notice this is a drag and drop editor. So if I wanted to bring in another form, like a new drop down field, selection field, I can come in here and do that. If I wanted to say, here's the options to this, it's a pick list, and I wanted to add, option 1, and I said this was, $150, and then I come in here and say I want, option 2, and this is $200, right? And you can then go through and see all of that, and you can configure that. Now, if it's something like department or cost center or something where we want to do something again and again and again, you don't have to create it each time manually. You can reference that one time in the back end called a validation list, and then you can call it up in those offerings in and of themselves. And then you see an example of the workflow. Every one of these request offerings is going to have a unique workflow that you can go through and manage as part of this. And you can see from here, this workflow is starts, goes to an approval. It's going to go out. In this case, I'm the approver and it's hard-coded to me. You can do that, or you can do users that are a member of a group, or you can have the user select their approver as part of that request offering, or you can have a user that's related to an employee like their manager or their manager's manager, right? And you can go through and do that all from that approval block. And then you'll see it created a task for someone in IT to go ahead and configure that device and deliver that. So these request offerings, this workflow, allow you to go through and make those changes. Right? So if I were to go through here and see, oh, here's our new employee setup that Mr. Hodzik put in for John Bartz here. Again, here was that form. If I wanted to add anything there, I can. If I wanted to look at the workflow though, here's the 4 different tasks: operation, facilities, IT, telecom. All of those are here. What if I wanted to add a couple of other tasks, right? Let's say somebody needs to create their AD account. And the first question everyone asks after that is, well, can we automate AD tasks or AD creation? Absolutely. We could run a web service, an API. We could come in here. We could call up Ivanti Automation to do runbook. All of that kind of stuff is there. But you can also go through and say something like, hey, I'm going to create this workflow and it's going to do AD setup here. As soon as the AD setup is done, it's going to create a task for someone to go ahead and create or do VPN setup for them. Along those lines as well. So the workflow can be both parallel and serial based upon however the structure that you want. And then you'll see as you go through and build this, you have a validation checker to say, do I have a valid workflow, or do I need to go through and fill out some additional information before it can be saved and submitted based upon that configuration.
Brian, we have a question here.
Yes.
Does a human always have to go through that form to kick off this workflow?
No. Again, API full structures is supported there. So if you wanted to kick that off through some other mechanism, like a new employee setup, that most of the time, we don't want to have a manager go submit a ticket for that new employee setup. We know a new employee is coming in from our HR feed, whether it's Workday, whether it's AltiPro, whether it's any of these other tools that are out there. We can go through and say, have that Workday API call over to Ivanti and create that request instead of having a user go through and do that. And even had customers go through and have Workday trigger that new hire request and then have it notify that manager with a form that they needed to fill out with additional things like what level of computer do they need, or do they need a monitor, some of those kind of things that we wouldn't know from the Workday feed that's there. So along those lines, we can go in and track, and there was actually, sorry, one other thing I wanted to show on this is who has access to this. So I can define who can see this request offering. Not every employee should see and a new employee request offering or an employee termination request offering along those lines. So you would be able to go through and filter that down as to who would be able to see that information in the organization. All right. Okay, we have full problem management within the module. We have full change management within the platform. We have release management within the platform, all within here, a full CMDB where we can go through and have all of our CIs and their relationships and all the different components associated with that. So if I were to come in here and say, let's look at our ERP application, we can see all of the details about that, but I also have a service delivery map that shows me, here's all the servers that make up all of this kind of configuration for the ERP. Now this is built by you today, right? We are looking at ways to be able to automate this in the future, but today you would build this kind of information, or we would import it from some other mechanism, but then you would be able to see, oh, if I'm going to take this server down, what's the impact of taking that particular server down for our organization along those lines. Now you can then extend the CMDB into our asset management view, and our asset management view, and I'm switching over just as a different role and into a different tenant, so it's just asset only here. They're both combined. They're one tenant for customers. I'm just trying to make it simpler by switching to a different tenant that you can kind of go through and see. But now we start moving into asset management where we take it beyond just a CMDB. And we're looking at full life cycle of an asset. We're looking at procurement information. We're looking at warranty information associated with that. So if I were to come in here and grab, a particular server, and let me do a quick or not a server, but a Surface. And we're going to look at this one specifically. And we can go through and start to see some details about that, like when did we purchase it? What PO did we use to capture that, right? All of that information is going to be here. Who's it been assigned to? What's its finance pieces there? What's the history of this particular asset as it's gone in and out of different users' hands and that kind of stuff? Or what software is installed on this particular asset? And then, and I don't want to get into a ton of this, but we can go in and talk about Neurons and the Ivanti platform that goes through and does self-healing and self-security and goes through and does discovery of all of these assets within there. And I could link over to Neurons and find more information, which I won't do as part of this. We'll have other webinars that will go through and talk about Neurons, but they are integrated and they can work together along those lines from here. And then you also see as part of this asset management, we have the concept of a product catalog. That product catalog are all of our standards, right? So here's that Surface Pro 7. This is a standard laptop in our organization. You'll see I have 5 of them out in the organization. I have some in stock, which means they're not given out to people yet, but they're sitting in a stock room waiting for somebody to request that. And then we would be able to go ahead and deliver that from there. And then we have, where can we order it from? What are our approved vendors? Where do we get this? What price do we pay for that particular asset? And then you would see underneath the stock, we would be able to go up in here and say, here's a storage room, our Salt Lake City inventory. We have assets, we have consumables like mice and keyboards and possibly monitors, depending on an organization. Things that we don't want to track from an individual serial number perspective. We just want to know we have enough on hand to meet demand. And then we track things coming in and out of the different stock rooms. So we know when somebody was given a laptop, who checked it in, who checked it out, all of that kind of stuff from there. Again, we have full procurement integration, and we have a full contract management module and vendor management module that sits on top of this asset. But we're at our time limit, so I wanted to take a couple of minutes to see if there were any questions before I go ahead and we close it up for this one. And then anyone who would like more information, we can absolutely schedule some dedicated time to show you things in more depth.
Yeah, Brian, we got a question here. We already use a procurement software. This doesn't replace it, does it?
No, 95% of our customers have a procurement software that they want to use. And we just integrate with that so that we can go through and see the purchase order is in your other system. And then we just sync that information over so that we can relate the purchase order to the asset and kind of work through from there. Yeah, we do have a few customers using this as a procurement system, but it's by far the minority for us.
Another question here. It says, is this just for hardware or do we do software as well?
Yeah, there's software assets as well. This goes through and talks about the software asset and what we call the entitlements. So you would see here's a bunch of software. Then we would be able to say the softwares that the licenses that we've purchased. We can discover where it's installed, but I don't want to get you anywhere by this is not a effective license position piece of software. This allows us to see what we've purchased. We can go out and find what's been installed through our Neurons and other discovery mechanisms, and we can create a little bit of a comparison there, but it doesn't understand the complexities of, Adobe allows you to install 2 locations, or Microsoft Office through 365 allows 5 installations. So it doesn't get into that effective license position component, but it does have software.
One more question here. What about warranty information?
Yes, warranty information is part of everything that we have. Where we get that source is going to be dependent upon you and where we can get that, whether it's from Dell or HP or Lenovo or CDW, or you guys have that information as part of your system. We can go through and you see the warranty information, as well as even extended warranties can be all put as part of these particular components.
Okay, that's it for questions for now.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Again, if you have or want to see more detail than we've been able to give you in this quick 45 minutes, we would be happy to schedule another session dedicated to you, and you can go through and we can really deep dive into all of these different things. We didn't show change. We didn't really show full CMDB. We didn't show release. We didn't show problem. We didn't show asset request, which is something I did want to show. When you have that product catalog and somebody comes in here and says, I want to asset request, we can actually go through and say, oh, let's go find out what are the available laptops and different things that are available. And they can say, yes, I want that Surface Pro. And you can get, some of that. So there's some other integration points that are there as well. Sorry, I forgot to show that earlier. And I wanted to.
Great. And just like you said, we very skimmed the surface here. We went, very, very high level. We'd love to give you a kind of a more in-depth demo that's tailored to your specific needs. We help out a large number of cities and counties and states with this technology. We have a good understanding of, kind of the different challenges that we have out there. We're right now in the process of helping 2 very large Western states go through some consolidation efforts where we're bringing in a bunch of individual state agencies and integrating them as one. So some very, very complex scenarios out there. We have a huge team of deployment engineers that have great expertise and really help you bring what the product comes out of the box and bringing it to your expectations. What you saw today was essentially just out of the box, what it looks like, the day after you install it. But, trying to tune it and refine it and make it fit and adapt to your exact entity's needs is a big part of what we do and what we're successful at. So we've got a big team of people that are able to do that. So if you want to know more about that, or if you want to know kind of more in-depth demo, please hit up your NCSI salesperson, or we're going to also probably reach out to you and see if you would like a more individualized follow-up, and we can tailor this presentation.
Hey, Brian, real quick. I've got a question here. When do I start that new job as head janitor in China?
Well, in 2 weeks. Don't you remember? We had that field level constraint. It was 2 weeks from now. December 24th, get to China in the next 2 weeks, John, and you are there. And thank you, John, for helping set this up. If anyone has problems with their lunch or whatever, John can be happy to reach out to you and help solve that. But if you have any further follow-ups, just hit up your NCSI salesperson, and we'd be happy to give you more in-depth demo. So thank you, Brian. Thank you, John. We appreciate everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Have a great day.